Hey everyone. So I'm back with NetBox and we're going to expand it a little bit, integrate it into Active Directory, so that way we don't have to create local user accounts within NetBox every time we want to add a new user. So by the end of this, we will get it running with a demo Active Directory controller that I set up in my environments. We'll add a couple users in there. We'll give them a few different levels of permission within inside NetBox. Not going to go too deep into how you can create multiple different views. Someone can only view these sites, someone can only view these regions, but hopefully by the end of this you'll have a good example or a good idea of what it looks like to get it working, how you can create some of those on your own. I'll throw some troubleshooting in there as well, just so you can verify things are going right, and what to look at when things aren't going right, what some of those logs look like. So without wasting any more time, jump into it. So I've got my NetBox here. We're on version 2.11.4. I believe 2.11.7 just came out, so not far off from the most up-to-date version. First thing we're going to do is switch our sudo over here and pull down a few packages that we need to get this started. So even though I did the sudo thing, I have it in there twice. The directions that I'm following here pretty much line up with what they have in the read the docs. So you should always read the docs, but it didn't go smooth when I just tried to follow the doc line by line. So that's why I'm doing the video, to kind of explain what I had to veer away from, how I had to make it work for my environment. So hopefully that helps you. But the more you get into Active Directory and integrating things with Active Directory, they get a little wonky. So I'll point that out when we get to it. So we've got our initial packages installed. Now we need to install the Django LDAP package. We're going to use pip to do that. So we switched over to our virtual environments. Install the plugin that we need. If you watched my upgrade video, you'll notice there were two errors that popped up in that video. One was that it couldn't copy over the LDAP config file. It also couldn't copy over the local requirements file. So until this point with my NetBox environment that I've been demoing on, those files haven't existed, but I include them in the upgrade script because it's just something that you won't have to remember if you get to a point where you do start using those files. So it causes some errors, just some non-impactful errors when you do the upgrade. But now that we're creating these files to do the LDAP authentication and the local requirements file, which is needed during upgrades, you won't see those errors anymore. So we've pulled in the plugins that we need. Now what we need to do is actually create that local requirements file and add this plugin that we just installed into it. So if we drop out of the virtual environment and take a look for this file, you'll see that there is no local requirements file. So we'll go ahead and create that file and add the LDAP auth package into it. Now when we look at that directory, we see local requirements is in there. We'll take a look at what's inside that file. And it's the one plugin that we installed. So now when you do an upgrade, this plugin will get updated and reinstalled as needed as part of the upgrade process. Now we're going to get into the NetBox configuration and tell it to use LDAP, to use something on the back end for authentication. So we'll go to our configuration file. And what we are looking for is the remote auth back end. So we're in Nano here. So I can do a Control W to search for remote auth back end. And right now it's saying remote user backends. So I'm just going to comment that guy out. And we need to insert the LDAP backend configuration here. So that's all we need to do within the configuration file. We'll Control X and save. Now we're going to create the LDAP configuration file. So we'll just do that with the touch command so that we're creating a blank file. Now what I'm going to do here is kind of pivot over to what I have here is the, I'll call it the vanilla LDAP configuration. And that's what you have from the documentation, from the read the docs of how to do that. Over here, I have the updated version of what we need for it to work with my domain controller. So I'm going to do a line-by-line comparison between the two files. So while I walk through this, anything that's in red here, this is what I added. Anything that's in green here, this was from the vanilla config. So starting at the top here, we have the LDAP server. You'll see that I'm using LDAP and not LDAP-S. So for troubleshooting, I like to keep this using the unencrypted version of LDAP requests. That way you can run Wireshark on the domain controller if you need to get into some troubleshooting. LDAP-S is more secure, it's encrypted, but that's easier for troubleshooting. So the next step down, we have the bind account that's needed to do user lookups inside Active Directory. So you have to point specifically at that guy by his full CN here. So we've got our account and our secret password. Next is telling the service where to search for our users. So my domain is demo.test. So over here we have changed it from users in example.com to just demo.test. This will be unique to your environment. So down here, I actually had to comment this line out. I'm running a domain controller on 2019, so this may come into play with older versions, or if you're using something other than Microsoft Active Directory. I'm not 100% certain, but I know with this guy turned on, it wasn't working for me, so I hit the hashtag, the pound in here to comment that guy out. The next thing we're looking at is what we need to do lookups for our actual groups. So the vanilla has listed groups of names. I had to change this to nested groups of names. I believe this is, again, going to vary mostly based on your environment. So you may have to try flipping this guy back and forth. That's also referenced down here again. Our next line here is again telling us where to search, but up here we're telling where to search for users. Down here we're saying here's where you start your search for the groups that you may be part of. So that's how you get it connected, pointed to your Active Directory server, your bind account, telling it where to search for users and where to search for groups. So the next bit right here, we need to define a group that everyone needs to be part of who's going to be a NetBox user. So it doesn't matter if you're going to be a super user, if you're going to be a read-only user, if you're going to create some kind of new profile for people to log into. There needs to be a common account that anybody who, or a common group, sorry, that anyone who's going to use NetBox is a part of. And I've called that my NetBox active group. So everyone needs to be added into that. The next part down here is where we start to specify what groups you're in within Active Directory that correlate to your privilege level inside of NetBox. So we have our active group again. This is the same group that's required to log in. So if you're going to use it, you have to be part of this active group. That's why I made it the same group. If you're going to be a staff person, so a staff person within NetBox, it's a predetermined role. That's somebody who can get into the back end of NetBox. So that's where you're having the custom fields set up, or if you need to modify an existing user account, or you're looking to really modify the underlaying of how NetBox works, you need to be part of that staff group. The other group here is the super user group. So this is where, again, it's a default role or a built-in role where if you're a super user, you can get in, modify sites, add hardware, change hardware, do things like that. So we're going to take the customized version of the config file, jump back over here, paste in our configuration, save it, and we are done. So at this point, I can restart NetBox. I can start using the Active Directory accounts that exist in there. So we'll go ahead and give NetBox a restart. And then after that guy restarts, take a quick peek, make sure that we've got the green active running, and we are good to go. So back to NetBox. Previously, it created a user called admin just as a local user. And we can see on that guy, we have the admin, which gets into the back end. This is that staff option. Go into our users. And we'll see all we have in there is our one local user with a funny email address. So go ahead and log out. And now we're going to try to log in as Dwight. So we are now logged in as Dwight, and you can see Dwight has the access to jump in and look at users. And now we see Dwight in there, and Dwight's information has populated over from Active Directory. I'm going to go ahead and log in as Jim next. And Jim does not have the staff group selected. And we'll log in as Jim, and he has no admin option. So if we log back out, and then log back in as Dwight's, go back into our admin backend and look at our users. And we see Jim has been added in there as well, and he doesn't have that staff status. So that's, in short, how it works. That's if everything works to the T and you got everything right. So, I took time to refine this and make it work. But obviously that isn't always going to be the case, and you're going to have to troubleshoot your way through this a bit. So from this point, I'm going to sort of take a step back and walk through some of the Active Directory components and show a little bit of how those groups are set up, how you can do some troubleshooting, because I had to do a lot of troubleshooting to make this work right. So the first thing we'll do is jump into my domain controller over here. And we'll take a quick look at Active Directory users and computers. And I set up our demo objects in here. So we have our 3 groups: our super user, our staff, and our active. So within active, you see Dwight, Jim, and Michael are all in there. But if we look at staff, the only person who's in there is Dwight, which makes sense for Dwight. And then our super users are everyone, and Michael and Jim are in there, so they can co-manage NetBox together. So that's where we set these guys up. Now, if we do need to do some debugging, there is a way to do that. Within NetBox, we need to make some changes to the configuration. So we're going to jump back in to our main configuration file. And what we're looking for is a heading called logging. Here's logging. So through the read the docs, there is this logging configuration, and there's a few things that you have to watch out for. So go ahead and add this guy in and explain a little bit of what's in here. Really, there's one part in particular that's most important, and that's this file name right here. So this directory, the logs directory, and the Django LDAP debug.log file don't exist. In reality, you can point this wherever you want it to. The key is that the user that's running the whole NetBox process has to be able to write to that file. So I'm going to take a little bit of a shortcut here. We're just going to create that directory inside the NetBox, where it was in the documentation. We're going to create the file. And then here's the shortcut. I'm going to chmod that file to 777. Obviously, that's not best practice, but this is temporary, so you would remove this after you're actually done. So now that we've got the file in there, we've got the permissions set. We're going to restart NetBox again. And I'm going to set up a duplicate window here while that's working. And what I want to do is tail that file in real time so we get an idea of what's going on. So this guy's still restarting. I've noticed that my VMs take a little bit longer to respond when I'm recording. That's fun. So okay, so we're back up and running. We're gonna go ahead and log in. Now, we logged in with Dwight and Jim already, but we haven't logged in with Michael. So that's what we're going to do. So you get a little bit. Michael. So Michael logs in, and over here we get a little bit of output of what that looks like. So, okay, we found Michael. We have created the user. We have populated him into the database. And then there's 3 lines right here that are real important. So we see that Michael is a member of active. He is not a member of staff. And he is a member of super user. So when we go over and look at Michael, yep, he's missing the back-end icon, so he definitely made it through. So I'll go back over here into Active Directory. Did I close that out? I did close that out. And from the active group, we're going to remove Michael. Completely remove him. Are you sure you want to remove him from that group? Yep, absolutely. Apply OK. So now we'll jump back over to NetBox. We will log out of Michael. We'll log back in as Michael. And we get an error. So some of the same things still hit. Here's Michael. Now his groups that you can see up here, it says that he was part of 2 groups or 2 objects. And down here it's saying he's only part of 1. And really where that breaks down is Michael does not satisfy the auth LDAP require group because we removed him from it. So we can go ahead, go back over here. NetBox isn't going to give you an error like this. It's just going to give you a generic username and password error. That's where enabling this logging helps. Go back to active. We'll add Michael back in. Okay. And there we go. Michael is better. So that's a start to ends, one shot, one take on how to get this done. The tricky part here really with this log file, once you get this going, is understanding how to configure all of those settings for your environment. So if you've got a very complex, robust Active Directory environment at work, you may need to get some help, if you don't control those aspects to figure out what settings work best. There's also a lot of trial and error as well. I had to trial and error a lot of my way through that. And one of the things that I had pointed out fairly early on was being able to use Wireshark. So using LDAP instead of LDAP-S, each time that we run a request, I can capture that information in real time and actually look at what that request looks like as it arrives to the domain controller. So you may have to do some of that if you have that ability. Who knows, maybe you can follow the guide or the way that I've gone through it to the T and it'll work well for you. But this is how I was able to get it working. It largely follows the documentation as it was written with a few tweaks. But I hope you're able to get it working as well. I hope this video is helpful for you, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.